Hello, I am Rebecca Miller, and I am ready to talk to you about resilience. We're going to do it without slides because we're having some issues, so use your imagination. I am a cyber risk analyst, and I also moonlight as a CISSP instructor. I specialize in business continuity and disaster recovery planning, so I create and update and test business continuity plans, disaster recovery plans, and incident response plans for businesses across all industries. Years ago, I was part of a leadership team for a hospital that had a major disruption. We had a time clock and payroll system, and it went down. We did not have a continuity plan, so we navigated an over 6-week downtime with trial and error. We worked 7 days a week, doing all sorts of calculations to try and figure out how to keep our people paid so that they were showing up. I decided then and there that I never wanted anyone to feel that way. And so I career pivoted, and now I help everyone avoid it by creating all of their continuity plans. And today I want to talk to you about what it means to be resilient for you. The definition of resilience is the ability to recover from or adjust easily to any change or misfortune. It is not a secret that business continuity and disaster recovery planning are vitally important for a business staying resilient. But what about you? What about your community and your family? Just like an organization, everyone around you in your circle needs to have a documented plan that gives you actionable recovery tasks, lists out any resources that you need to perform those tasks, and gives you workarounds for when things go sideways. I know a lot of us are scared right now. Our lives are full of constant disruption. We have social media and scare tactics coming at us from all angles, and it's constantly keeping everyone on edge. So today I want to talk to you past the buzzwords, okay? Things like MFA, strong passwords, and password vaults. They're critical in our current digital climate. But what happens when those safeguards fail? What's your backup plan? We are going to implement BCDR processes and theory to our own lives so we can create resilience for ourselves and for those that we care about. So we're going to talk through the tools to create a personal contingency plan using business continuity and disaster recovery techniques. Having a contingency plan can help you keep your livelihood and your inner circle intact, regardless of all the data mining and ransomware and PII breaches, all the socio-political upheaval that we're all dealing with. So the first step to creating a continuity plan is an impact analysis. So when I'm talking to a business, I'll ask, what are your essential functions? What would you need to continue to do regardless of a crisis or a disruption to keep your part of the business operational? For you, these are going to be things like going to work and paying bills, things that you have to do regardless of what your situation is. So you want to make a list, write it down. And once you have all of those essential functions listed, you need to add in what you need to perform all of those tasks. Do you need childcare, personal documents? Maybe you need bill pay instructions or logins for your bank. Maybe you need to access a password vault so you could make sure you can log into everything from banks to medical necessities, or maybe you just need a vehicle so you can take your kids to and from school, okay? There are a lot of things that people overlook, things like medication that you have to take regularly. Think about how you would function if you couldn't access those, okay? Maybe you have dietary restrictions that require specialty food. If you do you have a stockpile? Do you have a way to access those if you're in an emergency situation? And what about your pets? Can you move them with you quickly? Or have you considered alternate care arrangements that you can activate at a moment's notice? So an example of what I might put on my family list, well, I have to go to work. I have to pay bills. I have to buy groceries. I have to make sure that all of my animals are fed and cared for. I have to go to medical appointments, and I have to make sure my kids go to school. Okay? So to list out what I would need to do that, my husband and I both need a work laptop. Everyone in our house needs their personal laptop. We need Wi-Fi, access to our online banking portals. We also need a supply of money, right? So we can make the magic happen. We all have to have access to personal documents. That's vitally important. You need records like birth certificates. You need passports. You even need your marriage certificate, right? You have to have copies of any relevant medical records. If you are taking medication on a regular basis, you want to make sure that you have documentation that can prove the need for those medications. Everyone in our house needs a phone. We need to be able to access our doctors, our pet care people, right? We have apps on our phones to pay bills and for work and for school. We also need to be able to activate our emergency call tree. I have adult children and family that doesn't live with me, and I want to be able to access them at a moment's notice and let them know what's going on with my life. If you have any special requirements, stop and think about anything that you might need. You want to make sure you account for them when you're listing out all of your resources. Once you've done that, you need to look at your infrastructure and your security design internally. Once you know what you have and how it's set up, then you can look at how to handle a disruption to your baseline. So you want to evaluate any weaknesses that you might have. For example, where do you house your personal infrastructure? You either have it on a server at home or in the cloud, right? What happens when you lose access? If you don't have backups or redundancy, you are a single point of failure. So maybe you would consider using a UPS for battery backup in case you lose power. Maybe you want to look at implementing a secondary or round-robin DNS. If you have backup servers located in different regions, you have redundancy. If one server were to go down or maybe an IP address stopped working, all of your traffic can automatically be rerouted if you have a round-robin DNS in place, which means you keep your access to data, to websites, even if that primary connection goes down. Once you do that, you want to inventory all of your assets. Okay, do you have spare hardware on hand in case something crashes? You want to make sure you consider portability, okay? If you have to move to a new location, you want to make sure you have a laptop, a phone, a hotspot. What else? Okay, people tend to forget things like chargers for all of their devices, right? You want to make sure you add all of those things to your list. I personally travel with a lot of those power block extension cords so that I can function with limited outlets. Okay, write everything on your list that might be critical to keeping you operational. And then once you've done that, you can look at your personal impact. Think about how you, your family, or your community would be affected if your data was leaked. Depending on the situation and your personal circumstances, there could be a significant personal safety aspect to consider. So maybe there's something in your personal life that shouldn't mix with your professional life. This is when you have to be really honest with yourself. Think about things like, could I be penalized at work if certain data was compromised or released? And you need to stop and think, what are the biggest threats to your individual data privacy? Okay, we all know by now there are a lot of entities that scrape data, okay, whether from social media, the web, phishing, ransomware attacks, right? There are thousands of stories about public and private sector entities that are compiling lists. AI, machine learning is boosting hacker attacks, right? Threats from across the globe getting more and more sophisticated every day. So what can we do about that? Okay. Whatever your individual need may be, there is a safe product out there that can help you. And most of them are inexpensive or open source, okay? So you can check things like data leaks. You can look at Dhashed and Have I Been Pwned or Intelligence X, right? Maybe you want to check out Shodan and Census to do some threat intel on any internet-connected devices, okay? If you don't have a password manager and randomly generated passwords, right? Maybe go look at Bitwarden or 1Password. You need to start thinking about what tools that you could utilize to protect yourself. Check out new products. Just make sure you are thoroughly researching the company and the product before you choose to engage. And then you need to think about other threats. Are you part of a community that is in danger of an action or a reaction from any public or private sector group? Okay, so maybe you are an immigrant or you're part of the LGBTQ plus community, okay? Maybe you have been politically outspoken in the past, or you're part of a community of people that engage in activism, okay? Maybe you got your start in this community skirting the lines of legality, and now you have a target on your back simply because of something you did 20 years ago, okay? Everyone has their own unique circumstances, and you have to be honest with yourself and fully explore all of yours so that you can defend against what might come at you, okay? So how do you confirm the integrity of your data? Well, in a society where PII and PHI breaches are a daily occurrence, what assurances do you have that your data stays unaltered, okay? Hash all the things, right? Use digital signatures, verify sources, perform backups, and validate them regularly. But what happens when your data is already out there? What do you do to protect yourself once your privacy has already been breached? Log out of everything, right? Change your passwords, make sure they're all unique and strong. If you don't have MFA, get it done. Monitor all the things, especially your financials, okay? Consider spinning up a new email address, and let your loved ones know to be suspicious of any activity from you that might be out of the ordinary, okay? So set up a system of checks or code words. This is another time when that emergency call tree would be really useful. You could make one call or send one message and let that info trickle down through your network, okay? Practice safety. Maybe your loved ones or your community need a round of, security awareness and training for things like phishing or social engineering, okay? Get them that info. Educate everyone, because we all know knowledge is power, right? So make your circle strong by implementing the same security best practices at home, just like you do at work, okay? The next step is listing out and evaluating all of your controls. What steps are you currently taking to keep your data private? Do you have MFA on your accounts? And use a password manager. Have you moved away from SMS? Okay, everyone should at least be using Signal, all right? Have you checked out Valid? Okay, if you've attended DEF CON in the past, you've heard of it or become part of the network. Consider for a moment a network for communication with no traceability or stored data, okay? And then once you have that listed out, everything you're currently doing, then you can look at where your gaps are. What are you missing? What do you need to implement to strengthen your security, okay? Like a VPN, okay? Or maybe you haven't yet quit your relationship with social media, all right? You need to discuss the dangers of posting on social media with your friends and family as it relates to your individual situation. Just because you don't do it doesn't mean that they won't, okay? And you need to make sure that you spell out the danger that a poorly thought out social media post could pose to you in your situation. If you need help cleaning up your online presence, Shannon Miller at Lockdown Your Life has a really good data deletion class. It can give you a plethora of information, okay? And be honest, are you reusing passwords? Do you have easy to crack passwords? Okay, that's another reason to check out Have I Been Pwned, all right? And then You list out your alternate strategies, okay? Availability is key, okay? So if you lose primary control, what are your workarounds? You don't want to lose functionality while you are in crisis. So consider, what would you do if you couldn't access your bank account? You still need to keep the lights and water on, right? You still need to buy food. So maybe we open a secondary bank account or stock up on some prepaid debit cards, or maybe you keep a petty cash slush fund, okay? If you don't already know, you want to calculate how much money you need to survive for a month, 3 months, 6 months, all right? Being real with yourself. This is survival, right? Not day-to-day life. If it isn't on your essential function list, you don't want to budget for it, all right? We don't need the latest video game or a trip to Starbucks when we're in an emergency situation. So you want to make sure you're being real with yourself about what you need. And think about work. A lot of people live paycheck to paycheck or very close to it. So if you're in crisis, you have to figure out, can I report to work and maintain my cash flow? All right. Maybe we need to look at alternate options. Can we use up a PTO bank or work a different shift or maybe work remotely? Okay. So once you have all of those things written down, then you want to make sure that you look at everything to document those plans. Look at what needs to be done and decide who's going to do it. All right. Once you have it all written out and write down everything, people do not always stay calm in a crisis situation. So you want everything spelled out so nothing gets missed. Okay. And then you want to have multiple copies and you want to store them in different locations. You want to make sure you always have access no matter what. But the one thing that's on the mind of a lot of people is, when do I act when my personal safety is on the line? When you are in a situation that has the potential to harm you or someone that you love, it's really hard to be objective and stay calm, okay? In all honesty, I can't tell you what your specific timing would be, but I can tell you how to get there. You have to run scenarios, list out what types of social, economic, political situations could disrupt your normal, okay? If your safety was threatened, what's your immediate action? Be completely honest with yourself and write it out. And once you've outlined what needs to be done, who will do it, and how things need to be done, then you can walk through those scenarios and decide when. The one piece of advice I will give you on timing is you need to decide now. Write it into your plan. You don't wait until you're stressed out and in crisis to make a decision. You have to trust yourself and your planning and then act accordingly. All right. Once you have that plan created, you need to test it. Okay. Familiarize anyone in your circle that has a part in it with their exact responsibilities, and then practice completing those tasks. You want to be a well-oiled machine in a crisis, not running around in circles panicking. So walking through the steps and practicing is how you achieve a calm and structured response. Okay. This also gives you the ability to update your plans to keep them current. If you have a change in any of your circumstances, you need to review and update your plan. You don't want to wait until you are in an emergency situation to change your password or locate your documents or map out an escape route, okay? Keeping the plans current and viable will really, really pay off in the long run. All these processes you can apply not only to you and to your family, but your business, your community, okay? You can modify those steps however you need. The more detail you add and the more you test and familiarize yourself and your loved ones with all the strategies, the less panicked you're going to be if you find yourself in one of your scenarios. I hope that helps some or all of you today. Sorry about the slides.